Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. For this final project of the semester, I've chosen to present on the topic of AIDS and women. So tonight I'd like to talk to you a bit about how AIDS and HIV affect women differently and uniquely. Now, you might have thought of AIDS, and historically has been thought of as mostly a gay male issue, but the truth is that women have been getting AIDS and HIV since the beginnings of the epidemic. In fact, the first recorded cases of AIDS in the US were in heterosexual women. Though they were discovered in the years 1975 to 1981, they were not reported until October 1982, which is after that famous report of the 5 homosexual men with Kaposi's sarcoma that kicked off awareness of the epidemic in the US. And to this day, 20% of all AIDS diagnoses in the US since the beginning of the epidemic have been in women. As for worldwide statistics, we're now at the point where HIV and AIDS is the leading cause of death and disease in women of childbearing age worldwide. And for many of these women worldwide who are in developing, poor countries, they're facing a lot of issues and struggles unique to being a woman. Women who face the risk of HIV and AIDS, they face a threat of violence. We saw this when we watched the movie Yesterday, when Yesterday was beaten by her husband when she let him know that she was HIV positive and that he needed to be checked himself. That's a real thing. That happens to women. Also, and a lot of these women in developing countries with more traditional masculine societies, women are unequal. They face a lot of cultural inequalities, and that can affect their risk of getting HIV. If a woman doesn't want to have sex with her husband who has HIV, she's out of luck. If her husband wants to have sex with her, she has to have sex with him, even if he's HIV positive. She doesn't have the power and the empowerment to bargain and say no. If she insists on him wearing a condom and he says no, then she doesn't have the power to make him insist. Additionally, going along with this whole idea that women lack power and it's the men who make the decisions, women are financially dependent on them. If a woman refuses to have sex with her husband, she might find herself without a husband and without a source of money because she's financially dependent on him. And these women might not have the resources needed to go and get themselves tested to pay for antiretroviral therapy. Also, women have what I wrote as the burden of caretaking. In many, many countries around the world, women are traditionally caretakers. They take care of young children, they take care of the older adults. So because of this, their whole taking care of themselves falls back on the wayside. They can't take care of themselves and they can't take care of their HIV and AIDS because they're so busy taking care of themselves, and their health falls on the back burner. Additionally, women face a lot of stigma and discrimination, a lot of times a lot worse than for a man who has HIV. All of these issues, along with many other factors, have led us to the point where worldwide, women now are the majority of people living with HIV. Globally, 51% of people with HIV are women. This figure is even higher, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, where 59% of people with AIDS are women, and women are the fastest growing segment of new HIV infections. You can see at the bottom of the chart, North America, the region that we're in, is only at 22%, but this is still a very significant figure. As a matter of fact, in the US, in 2015, women made up 19% of the new HIV diagnoses in the US. And here in this chart, we see 7 of the most affected subpopulations, and 3 of them are of women. Black heterosexual women, Hispanic and Latina heterosexual women, and white heterosexual women. This is even better illustrated in my next chart. Of those 19% of new infections, just a note, even though this chart says the figures are from 2010, I found more recent figures from 2015 that they are, for the most part, pretty similar. In 2015, of the new HIV infections in women, 61% of them were in Black women, 19% of them were in white women, and 15% were in Hispanic and Latino women. This is significant because when you look at the population breakdown, Black women only make up 13% of the population of females in the US, but they made up 61% of the new HIV infections. Black women share the largest burden of new HIV infections, and a lot of this is due to a lot of cultural socioeconomic factors. Black women are more likely to be faced with poverty, not have the resources needed to take care of themselves in terms of avoiding HIV. Also, studies show that Black women face a lot of stigma and discrimination in their communities, which is also an important factor. Of these new infections in women, the vast majority of them are coming from heterosexual intercourse. Of new HIV diagnoses in women, 86% of them are due to heterosexual intercourse. The next largest category is injection drug use, which is 13% of the new HIV infections. But the number one most important thing is that in women, they have a high risk of getting HIV through heterosexual intercourse. And really, this comes down to that a lot of this comes down to biology. It's a lot riskier for a woman to get HIV than it is for a man. The chance of a woman getting HIV from an HIV positive man through heterosexual intercourse is 1 in 300. If you switch the sexes around, the chances that a man gets HIV from an HIV positive woman is only 1 in 1,000. And like I said, this comes down to biology and physiology. There's a higher viral load in semen than in vaginal fluid, and there's a higher surface area in vaginal mucosa. There's more places where the virus is able to penetrate and enter the body. It just comes down to that. It's a lot riskier for women than it is for men. Now, also this semester we've been talking about all the different symptoms of HIV infection, all the opportunistic diseases that come with AIDS, and for the most part, there aren't so many differences between men and women, though I did find a few in my research. When women are HIV positive, they may experience changes in their menstrual cycle. They might have lighter periods, heavier periods. They might experience stronger premenstrual syndrome symptoms. Their HIV positive women are more likely to experience bacterial and yeast infections. They're more at risk of sexually transmitted infections like gonorrhea, chlamydia, and additionally, these infections, if left untreated or able to get hold, can spread up into the uterus, the fallopian tubes, the ovaries, and cause what's known as pelvic inflammatory disease, which is very significant fertility-wise and also just in a general health-wise. Number one most important interesting thing is that in terms of opportunistic infections, women have a unique risk of contracting HPV and cervical cancer. HIV positive women, especially with low T cell counts below 200, are much higher at risk of contracting HPV or human papillomavirus, which can later on develop into cervical cancer. And that is why recommendations are for immunosuppressed women to get regular screenings for cervical cancer, because of course, like with so many other diseases and conditions, earlier detection means better outcomes. Now, since we're talking about what makes women unique in terms of HIV/AIDS, it's important to discuss that women are unique because they're able to transmit HIV from their children to their children. Women can transmit HIV to their children during pregnancy, during delivery, and even afterwards during breastfeeding. So it's important that all pregnant women are screened for HIV as soon as possible, because the earlier you can find women who are HIV positive, the sooner you can start them on antiretrovirals. So ideally, women will take antiretrovirals throughout their pregnancies, throughout delivery, and then their babies will then have to take antiretrovirals for 4 to 6 weeks after birth. Additionally, some women might have to have C-sections in order to reduce the risk of them transmitting it to their children. The idea being that the faster you get the baby out, the less time it's exposed to the mother's blood or cervicovaginal secretions. And then afterwards, when the baby's out, since there's a risk of transmitting HIV through breast milk, the recommendation is that babies are fed formula instead. The good news is that because of antiretroviral therapy, we're now in the US at the point where transmission rates of mother to baby can be as low as less than 1%, as long as the mother takes antiretrovirals all throughout her pregnancy, labor, delivery, and the baby's on antiretrovirals for 4 to 6 weeks afterwards.